I think not everybody deserves to hear our story. So I think survivors have this thing when they start a new relationship or they have a new set of friends, they feel as if they have to tell everything about their story and what's happened to them. And actually, you don't. You don't have to say one darn word about it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. Thank you for joining me. This podcast is a safe space for victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault to share their stories and connect with others who've been through similar experiences. I believe that sharing our stories is an important step to healing, and my hope is that the SAS podcast will help victims and survivors feel less alone and more empowered. I'm your host, Dave Markel, coming to you from the Podvlog studio in St. George, Utah, and I'm here each week to provide a platform for victims and survivors to tell their story and for experts and professionals to offer insights and information to help us all in our healing path and provide an education on being trauma-informed in order to bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. If you or someone close to you has been through the difficult experience of being a victim or survivor, or if your responsibilities involve understanding, supporting, or helping individuals who have experienced the trauma of rape or sexual assault, I urge you to consider subscribing and tuning into this podcast regularly. It's essential to recognize that you are not alone in this journey. There is a community here that cares deeply about your well-being. My goal is to provide you with insights, resources, and a supportive space where empathy, compassion, and understanding thrive. Your experiences matter, and my commitment is to being there for all my listeners every step of the way. Thank you again for joining me. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. You've tuned into another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast, and I'm glad you're here. This is episode 72, and this week, Caroline Markel Hammond has joined us again to bring us up to date on what's happening at Safe in Harm's Way, her nonprofit organization. For my listeners who have not yet heard Caroline's harrowing story of rape and sexual assault and the healing journey she's on, take a listen to episode 19. Then you'll understand why I've had her back on my show for the third time now. Check out episode 45 too. Caroline and I have decided that we will make her appearance on this show a monthly occurrence. She has become a great friend over the months since her first appearance and a great colleague in our mutual endeavors to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. After you've had a chance to listen to her, you'll understand why she's going to be a regular guest. Let's get to it for this month's update. Here's Caroline. Caroline Markel Hammond, thank you so much for joining me again.
Well, sir, thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you for having me on. Anytime I get to spend with you is good. And I know it usually takes approximately 15 to 175 text messages in order to coordinate it. So I appreciate...
we did better this time.
I know, we did it. We shortened the curve a little bit.
Well, I think that's your commitment. You said last time we did this that we should talk at least once a month, and we've stuck to that. And we made last month's conversation into an episode. We're going to do the same thing here, which is really great. So I appreciate you. And I'm not the only person you've been doing podcasting with. You are now a Monday podcaster.
I am. It's been a beautiful evolution. I'd love to talk about that for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, the Monday mom.
Yeah. So I did a podcast a couple years ago with a woman named Maya Huber, and her podcast is named What Was Her Name? And shared my story. What was supposed to be a 45-minute podcast, we actually turned off the podcast and talked for another 2.5 hours. She's an incredible young woman. Over time, we've gone back and forth. I do a lot of work with people who've navigated violence and are in the healing process. I've actually shut that down part of my offerings because I'm booked. I could literally do it 20 hours a day and not have any spots left. But Maya and I just struck a relationship, and she said, look, I feel bad hogging you to myself. I really feel like I need to put your voice out into the world. Would you do an every Monday stint with my podcast? We'll call it Mama Mentor. And I loved it because one of the things that Maya and I talk about as it relates to women navigating life, there becomes this moment, and I see it more in women. I'm not eliminating men from the conversation, but I see it more often in women, a squashing of themselves, a squashing of their feelings, that their feelings don't matter. That, hey, I know that like I'm on this date and he really kind of gives me the creeps, but maybe that's just me. Exactly. Maybe that's just you. And that's a sure sign. You don't even have to explain it, honey. You can walk away. But people don't realize that. And realizing at Maya's age, she's the same age as my kids, we can have really great conversations about the dynamics between parents and adult children. Maya's still going to love me through it because I'm not her mom. So that's the beauty of it. And we can address those things that adult children need to have with their parents, but we can also address the things that young women of Maya's age, had I known at her age that my feelings mattered, had I known at her age that what I wanted in my life mattered, had I known any of that, I definitely would not have married the man I married. I definitely would have made different choices in how I dated people and my interactions. I definitely, and this is the kicker, would have been a much different parent. So if I can reach Maya 25 to 30 years before I learned those lessons, what kind of relationships is she going to have? What kind of parent is she going to be?
Right.
What kind of worldview is she going to develop? If we get to have those conversations with each other and then bring that to the world, because again, I know that I can say the most brilliant things to my children, and they're not going to pay close attention, but they will listen to the person down the street who says the exact same thing as me. And we also have an element of parents who maybe they've realized how they parented could have been different, and they refuse to acknowledge that. So instead of saying, you know what, when you've come to me, darling child, and told me that you really wish I would have been a different mother, for me, I sit with that and I say, you know what? Okay, I get it. Let's talk about it. I also say I could have done better, but this is what I knew to be true at the time. That is a lesson I have grown into. I can't say that I ever started out that way. Mm-hmm. So for parents to be able to say, I get what you're saying, and I'm sorry that that happened. This is the best I did, and I'm sorry that it happened, and I'll commit to you. Let's figure out what our future looks like. That's a far better conversation to have than, really sorry about your luck. I didn't have it so great either. So it just allows different conversations that validates the feelings of young people and holds them accountable, because there have been times in our journey that with Maya and I that I do not let her off the hook, and I know it makes her mad. But we have to be able to hold each other accountable. We have to say you can do better as the parent-direct-child relationship. For adult children, we have to acknowledge that there could be hurt feelings on how they were raised. And I keep saying to my kids, oh my gosh, do better than I did. I want you to take the best parts of me and bring that to your parenting. And I want you to take the parts that hurt you, that I didn't do well, and eliminate it. And tell me what those are. Tell me how you're growing in your own journey of parenting. And those kinds of conversations have just been the evolution of Mama Mondays. We're now in the point where we're answering questions from our listeners, which is really kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
A big part of that and the evolution of my ability to do podcasts, Dave, comes from people like you having me on your show. So thank you for the evolution.
I just think it's an extreme honor, because every time we talk, there is something that I take away from what you say personally that edifies me. And I know that my audience has done the same thing. Sure, if we're going to get caught up with each other every month, we might as well turn that into an episode, because there's nothing that we talk about that I don't think is something that everybody in my audience should hear. I said it before, I'll say it again. If Caroline Markel Hammond says it, it's worth listening to. And I just feel really grateful for you for allowing me to have our catch-up conversations every month on a public basis like this.
Well,
it's wonderful.
I love it. I love it. You're a generous host and a generous human in the fact that you open up yourself like that, and you're open to having whatever the conversation brings us. So I love that, making this a gig whenever we get to do it in kind of a free flow form, that we can have this opportunity, because I do believe the conversations we have foster understanding, eliminates shame and silence. And we know that shame and silence actually turns out to be deadly. So if we can talk about the things that need to be brought out, normalize people's experience within what is a completely abnormal situation, then we open up the opportunities for healing and the finding of resources. And I'll play in that arena every single day with you, sir.
Absolutely. This is an honor for me.
Right back at you, sir. Right back at you.
My audience is amazing. I keep getting requests because I've put it out there. You've probably heard certain episodes where I say, hey, if you're ready to tell your story and you want to do that as part of your healing process, email me, contact me so that we can have a discussion and see if this is a right fit for you. And I keep getting either people who are direct listeners or people that I've already had on the show who recommend other people that they know to come be on the show. And I got to tell you, Caroline, this podcast is growing far beyond anything I ever thought it would. It's amazing to me. I love it. And
I love it.
Part of that has to do with you. You are one of my most listened to episodes from when you originally told your story. They see your name now and click on those episodes too. So all the episodes that you've been on are growing exponentially.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that. There's such beauty. I'm trying to choose my words carefully because the stories that you cover are horrific. There's nothing beautiful about them, except that when people share their stories, we create community. And we create less silence and shame.
Right.
And silence and shame kills. So let's keep doing that. Let's keep having the stories. And the one thing I love about how you treat people when they come on is it's just done with such care and such quality. It's hard. It's really hard. I have a dear friend named Darius, and he leads a meditation group every Friday. And Darius calls it a vulnerability hangover. It's after you've chosen, after all the thinking and all the stewing, to share your story. And you share it, and then you go to sleep. And then the next morning you wake up and you're like, what the hell did I just do?
Yeah.
That's a vulnerability hangover. So when you have a vulnerability hangover, my solution for that is, first of all, a great big glass of ice water. Ice water regulates that nerve that runs from the top of your head to your toes. It regulates your nervous system. Ice water doesn't instantly. It's the most perfect solution. The other thing I recommend is to put your feet in the grass. If it's cold out, choose wisely. But if it's not cold out and it's not snowing out and you can put your feet in the grass, it's beautiful. That's another way to be grounded. And that's another way when you're having a vulnerability hangover. That's part of telling your stories. And I think I know when I talk to people, they feel as if they're doing it wrong. If the next day, I always call it my skin itches, it's like every nerve ending is on fire. You actually did something great to release it from your body. So drink your glass of ice water through that vulnerability hangover and come out on the other side knowing that your story, A, made feel somebody else in the world way less alone, and B, actually getting those words out of your body is equivalent to running a marathon in your healing process. And just as a marathon, you should feel kind of crappy the next day.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. The issue of running a marathon, and running a marathon isn't for everyone. I've never run a marathon. I can't picture myself ever running a marathon. But there are some people that aren't going to tell their story, at least publicly. I'm doing some research on that right now because I want people to know that when I say, hey, if you're ready and want to tell your story as part of your healing journey, want to tell your story on this program, email me, call me, let's talk about it. There are people who have reached out to me and said, I want to, but I'm not ready. And I don't know that I'll ever be ready. And I want people to know that there's nothing wrong with that. Every therapist I've ever talked to has said, you've got to tell your story to someone. And I think on some level, I agree with that, but I don't think that means you have to tell it publicly. I don't think it means you have to tell everyone. Telling your therapist, telling someone that's super close to you that you really feel safe with, really feel that you can trust. Yes, I think that's a healing step that needs to be taken. We can't just stuff all these feelings inside, put them in a compartment, close the door, lock it, and throw away the key. I think it needs to be discussed. Talk to me about your impressions and your experience with not only your story, but other people that you've talked to that have said, I'm not going to tell my story publicly.
I love, love, love that you brought this up Dave, it's like a little wink from the universe that you did. I don't know what's going on in the world lately, but there's a couple tentacles I'd love to address that directly relate to what you just said. The first one is the judgment that happens between fellow survivors. And by that, I mean, well, something similar happened to me and I didn't behave that way. I didn't take that choice. I didn't do what you did. You must be lying. That's horrific. That's horrific.
Mm-hmm.
We have got to stop blaming each other for the way that the intimate intricacies of what happened to us are ours to own and not to be judged by another person as should have been, could have been. I didn't do it that way. There's a problem with you. We are divided already by systems that marginalize us. Why would we do that to each other? And so we have to honor anybody's journey of what that is. We also have to realize as survivors, the choice to not speak is often the best use of our voice. So if we've been silenced in an experience that relates to violence and we start to heal and we feel like, oh my gosh, I have to speak up on everything. I have to get the words out. I have to say that's not right. I have to say it if I see a commercial I don't like on TV. I have to, all the things I got to speak about. Actually, no, you don't. You don't. Your silence can speak volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, silence looks like this. I'm going to recommend somebody to follow if people don't. He's on Instagram. His name is Travis Fisher. He's a lawyer and he talks about scenarios and then he gives you 3 ways to respond to that scenario. It's brilliant. It means you don't have to engage. If you want to use your voice to speak about something, you can, but you can also give a one-liner and walk away. My favorite one-liner to give when I really would rather tell somebody in an expletive-filled rant where to go and what to do with themselves, what I say is, oh, that's interesting. I just learned so much about you. And then I walk away. Saying nothing and saying one-liners and walking away are actually the best use of our voice. The third thing in response to your question is if you want to write it down in a safe space or you want to contribute for Safe in Harm's Way, we are getting ready to amp up our Survivor Story platform. We're taking our time with it because we want to make sure we get it right. But if somebody wants to write their story anonymously, because that would feel cathartic and deliver it to us and then say, but I really don't want you to publish it yet or maybe at all, that's fine. I won't. If it just helps to get your story out and deliver it to someone and decide, but don't publish it yet, that's also okay.
Yeah.
The final component is, I think not everybody deserves to hear our story. So I think survivors have this thing when they start a new relationship or they have a new set of friends, they feel as if they have to tell everything about their story and what's happened to them. And actually, you don't. You don't have to say one darn word about it. That's yours to own. And some people don't deserve to hear your story. And if you share your story with someone and their response isn't what you need, you don't have to keep engaging with that person. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to tell them why it was so important for you to speak. If someone says, oh my God, what? Really? You allowed that to happen to you? I appreciate your response. I'm learning a lot about you. And done. Mm-hmm. Some people, once you share your story, don't get access to you anymore because of their response. That also means, in turn, you don't have to share it. I just think there's so many different ways of sharing being an out loud billboard type of thing when the reality is it could just be choosing to write it down yourself and tuck it away. Write it down yourself and burn it into a fire. Write it down yourself and crumble it up and pour hot sauce on it and run it down the garbage disposal because it's soaking wet. Let it. Or you can choose to start speaking. Whichever way you want to do it, zero judgment, especially if you're listening to this now and you're thinking, gosh, I've never told anybody my story. Then I want you to know that you don't have to squash yourself down anymore. You don't have to berate yourself anymore. Your story is yours to own. It's unique. And also there's a great power in choosing not to share it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think about what I said?
I think that's a tremendous message that there's power in not telling your story, just as there is power in telling your story. Mm-hmm. If part of the healing process for you is acknowledging to yourself, I think that's a huge component, acknowledging to yourself that you've endured and survived a horrific experience, because a lot of people can't get to that point immediately. It takes a while to acknowledge and get past their own personal denial, which is a human function of trauma response and should be accepted and realized, but also gotten past, because you have to accept yourself for who you are. And if you are a survivor of something horrific, telling yourself, hey, at least I survived, is telling someone, even if it's just yourself. You can look in the mirror, you can say it in your mind, as long as you're saying it. At least I survived. Trauma and Memory he says the same thing, that a lot of this healing process has to come in small little increments, that we have to accept in tiny little pieces, and that as we expand our minds and our thoughts and let our own personality dilate a little bit, it may shrink back down, but at least it dilated at some point, and you realized that that didn't kill you. And the next time you're ready to do that again, that dilation actually comes a little easier, that opening up. And then you accept that and acknowledge that. And there's a lot of self-praise that needs to go into that. Wow, I did good for myself, and it feels better. And you take note, kind of like mindfulness. You take note of what that felt like, and you document it, because that helps form new neural paths in your brain to hear yourself say, I did it. I said it. I acknowledged it. I admitted it. I stopped denying it. And then as you work through that, that gets larger and larger and easier. And there may come a day when you say, I need to tell somebody. I can't tell you how many times when I've been teaching, presenting, people have come up to me on break or at lunch or after the presentation and said, I've never told anybody this, but I feel safe telling you. And I think you've mentioned this to me before, that they say, I've never told anybody this. I don't know that I'll ever be able to tell anyone this, but I just feel compelled and want to tell you I'm a victim. I'm a survivor. I'm going through this, or I went through that. I don't want you to tell anybody. I don't want anybody else to know, but it just was important for me to say it to you. I cherish those moments, you know?
Oh, I do too.
It's amazing.
I do too. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And so I think those are important mini steps, M-I-N-I, not M-A-N-Y, mini steps to get to the point where maybe you are ready to tell your story publicly. But I don't think there should be any shame, any guilt, any disparagement towards anyone who isn't ready to tell their story or doesn't want to. I just think it needs to be talked about. I think people need to hear that in our audiences, that you're okay if you don't want to. It's not something that's wrong with you.
And you know what? Let's take that a step further. You're okay if you have 72 great days in a row and a weekend where you have to spend it in bed. That is still healing.
It absolutely is.
I think people look at it as, oh my God, why is this happening again? I have to deal with this again. Yes, you do.
Yep.
For 1,000,001 reasons, your body has decided that something in your life that just happened seemed close enough to the feelings you felt before. Your body needs the time to rest and to drink ice water and sit in the grass and do the things. I will even say the biggest thing I've learned lately is I'm calling it the look back. Sure, there's people much smarter than me that have a technical term for it. But when you do so much healing and you look back and you're like, oh, so I've been making this kind of mistake for 32 years. That's hard. It's not a mistake. You were conditioned to learn something. Your body was running a pattern that kept you safe. And then you finally did enough healing work that you recognized the pattern. And there's a pain in that recognition. Yeah. And that's all okay too.
I agree. 100%. Like you just said, I think it's part of that healing process. I think it's something that maybe not all of us go through in the same way, but it's part of the human nature to look back and say, where have I come from? What have I accomplished? What have I done wrong? What have I done right? An assessment. Yeah, that looking back is critical.
Thank you for sharing that, Dave. I love that.
Thank you for sharing what you've been sharing, because it's your thoughts that provoke my thoughts. And that's why I love talking to you. That's why these conversations are so important to me. It's why I feel listened to and heard from you, is the fact that you have reached out to me, even days, weeks where we haven't said a word to each other, and all of a sudden I get a text from you that says, hey, it's time to get caught up. Um, knowing that I'm on that list of people that you want to stay in touch with, it's like gold to me. It's a treasure and I cherish it. So thank you.
Well, gosh, right back at you. The way in which you navigate the world with love and graciousness and support is something I wish we could bottle up and like put it in pill form or in a powder that you could mix with your hot chocolate. Because you just give this intelligent, calm demeanor of soul fuel that I love to be around.
Well,
So
thanks.
if we could figure out how to like market that, Dave, that'd be great.
Thank you. I appreciate those words. I mean, I haven't always been this way. And like I just told you, I've been in situations with family members, loved ones, that I wasn't that. I wasn't that goodness. I wasn't that love. I wasn't that insightful. I think that we all have a responsibility to try and improve ourselves, to educate ourselves. So much of the way I am now, I chalk up to some amazing colleagues and mentors and people who've crossed my path, maybe even just for a day or two or three, short periods of time, maybe just an hour, who have dispensed to me some wisdom or just a lifestyle that I wanted to emulate. And I do my best to educate myself and learn from those people who I think are doing it right. Part of all of this, and what I try to do in my business world of Markel Consulting, is teaching people what it means to be trauma informed.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a huge part of that comes from people like Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine and Rebecca Campbell and Joanne Archambault and Kim Lonzo. I could name after name, Jim Hopper. I could just go on and on and on with these amazing people who have this really deep, wonderful grasp of the neuroscience of the brain and the psychology of how that works within us. Because it's two different things. Your mind and your brain are separate. Your brain does things your mind can't control.
Right.
Your brain is making your heart beat and helping you take breaths and telling you when to eat and how much sleep you need. And your mind can be saying the exact opposite. I don't want to eat anymore. I don't want to sleep right now, and all these things. So it's two separate things, and we need to learn that. There are separations between our brain and our mind, but then how to use that in ways to communicate with each other in more productive ways. And I think the basis for all of what I'm saying is respect.
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. If someone isn't respecting you, you need to stay away from that person.
Right. And you don't even have to label it. You don't even have to say, you know what, it was at 3:00 on Tuesday afternoon and they said this. It can just be how your body feels. I don't like to be around that person. My body doesn't feel good. My ears itch. My stomach hurts. I don't like it. I can't name why. I don't like it. And that's the beauty.
Yep.
We don't have to name why. We just have to say, you know what, body? Thanks for letting me know.
Mm-hmm.
Ears, I'm so glad that you're purple and turning red because that's always a signal that I don't really belong where I'm at. Thank you. I'm paying attention. I'm going to leave. Acknowledging those feelings and walking away, even if we can't put a label to it, is so counter to anything we've been taught to do. But the beauty of our brain is it has documented millions of pieces of tiny little evidence. And so it is on the prowl when something feels like something to have us step away. There's so many survivors I work with, and I hear it all the time. Well, you know what? I don't know. I mean, we're going on a date. There's just something about him that makes me feel uncomfortable. But it could just be my triggers. Like, it's probably just me. Actually, it is just you. Your body is telling you something. It is just you. So embrace it, exalt it, thank your body for doing it. And if it seems like it's just you, don't go out with that person. Don't start dating that person. Don't participate in a group culture class with that person. Don't do it. Your body is telling you something, and your brain has stored so much information. And if that means you walk away from many people, walk away, because your brain will also tell you when someone feels good and someone feels healthy and someone feels safe. And those people will take the place more and more and more and more, the more you walk away from those people who don't. Yeah, Maya and I were talking about this. She's like, well, wait a minute. So, like, I have to keep walking away from people? I said, heck yeah, if your body tells you. We were having this back and forth conversation about that. And she said, how many people have you walked away from? I said, well, I had disassociated so much from my body that I was willing to walk away from multiple people. I didn't care how many people in order for me to really get in touch with how my body felt. I can tell you that the people I walked away from, I should have. My body did never steer me wrong, not once. Maybe I found out about something about them a year or two later. Maybe I found out something about them within a week. My body was never wrong. Now let's talk about like a different lane of that. Let's say your body is feeling good and you're in a relationship with someone or a friendship with someone, because it can be either romantic, lover, friend, acquaintance. You're navigating this relationship, it's all great because your body feels good, you're recognizing things. And then 2 years in, something reveals itself that your body goes, whoa, you still walk away. It's not that you missed something. It's not like you have, as the survivor, have to be perfect in your assessment and judgment of people. You didn't miss anything. What happened was the situation finally revealed itself in a way that you learned something that didn't make your body feel good, positive, happy, joyous, safe around this other soul.
And it's constantly being assessed by your body, by your mind, by your brain, all three of those aspects, because the body does keep the score. We may have a physical reaction that we have absolutely no idea where that physical reaction came from. Our body does, but our brain might not have communicated that to the language part of our brain where we can actually say to ourselves, I feel fear of this person because, like you just said, it doesn't have to be labeled. It just has to be felt. It just has to be there, has to be acknowledged. And we have to know to do exactly what the sign behind you says, and that is keep ourselves safe in harm's way.
It does. Exactly.
That's an amazing name of an organization, by the way.
Oh, I wish that I could take claim for it. It actually comes from my very dear friend, Judy Culp, who's a writer and a music producer, graduate of Howard University. Stellar woman. We went to high school together. Here's the beauty of Judy. We were friends in high school. We didn't necessarily run with the same people, but we were always friends. Years pass, right? I haven't seen her forever. And she reaches out after something significant in my life. And she says, so your Facebook looks a little different. I see that there's a person missing that used to be a regular. Anything you want to talk about? That's beautiful. She spoke up. I talk about that all the time. If you see something different in somebody, you don't have to say, tell me what happened. Just say, I noticed something different about you. Or I noticed something different about your Facebook. Are you okay? And if you ever want to talk, I'm here.
Yeah. And that's the key right there. Noticing it is one thing, but addressing it in the right way is the other thing, without pushing you off, without making you feel forced, without making you feel unsafe about the possibility of revealing that, and giving you the door to say, I'm giving you the access to open that door or close that door or keep it closed. Yeah. Because she did. She says, is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to talk to me about?
Here.
Is there anything
whenever you want?
And it gave you the freedom to say, nope, not ready. Yep. Don't want to, or nope. You can even say, nope, there's nothing for me to say.
Right.
It's not a lie.
That's the beauty of what she did. And so as I did feel more comfortable and I started out speaking more, and there were, of course, moments in how do you navigate living in fear when the person who has stated his intentions to kill you lives just a mile away. And she had a conversation with me and she said, Carolyn, you're safe now. You were in more harm's way when you didn't know about his secret life. Don't get me wrong. You're still in harm's way, but you are safe in harm's way now. And she's like, actually, if you're going to start an organization, I think you should name it that. And so I did.
That's some amazing insight on both your parts. Number one, that she mentioned it. And number two, that you adopted it.
Yeah. Yeah. She also had she's a music producer, and she has a song that I think, it was done in maybe 2014, and she gave me the music rights to it because the name of the song is Safe in Harm's Way. And it's a brooding kind of electronic song that has a joyous rhythm that runs through it. It's actually the most perfect song. So she gifted that to me, and I gifted her the ability to write the screenplays. She's a screenwriter as well. So
wow.
Yeah. The reason that it was so beautiful to pick today is twofold. Today is the 2-year anniversary of when we first launched in Times Square and across the country our action and awareness campaign that was called thelastI'mSorry.com. So when apologies result in zero change, what do you do? And it's where Safe in Harm's Way, along with our partners at domesticshelters.org and along with Neon, which is an IPG health company, created the only and first in kind, still never duplicated website where people actually get to take a journey as how they identify and what's their problem that they're currently facing. So it's built for men, it's built for women, people of color, the queer community, English as a second language, and people who are medically compromised. Because, the best way to issue control over someone if you're a diabetic is to take their insulin away. So any person facing abuse can identify, answer a series of questions, and then get 2 immediate and actionable resources that they can take advantage of. And it's at thelastI'mSorry.com. So today's the 2-year anniversary of those billboards premiering
Congratulations.
in Times Square. Thank you. But it's also the big announcement. I'll be talking about it a lot on social media, but Neon just won 5 Anthem Awards, 44 different countries competing on social causes and the awareness campaigns that drive change and save lives. Wow. We won in 5 categories for those campaigns.
That's huge. 5 categories.
5 categories. Neon won so many categories in that campaign and in the Anthem Awards that they actually created an inaugural award for Neon as the best agency of the year.
That's amazing.
Stellar humans there, bringing to life the most beautiful ideas and saying, how can we make this impactful, create awareness and draw people in? And they take any idea I've come up with or any playlist I've given or anything I've hand drawn, and they make it 10 million times better and create love and beauty and art around it. Hey, and also Kevin Bacon was a winner for the Anthem Award. So now, everybody just needs to say, I just want to say you're welcome, because you're now all several degrees closer to Kevin Bacon than you were on Wednesday.
Wow, that's cool. I love that. I feel closer to Kevin Bacon as we speak.
So yeah, I did have Thursday open as far as later in the evening, but I thought, you know what, if there's anybody I want to talk to on this day about these things, it's Dave before I go public with him. I've been holding them close to my chest and my heart to just have the most good vibes about it and telling a few people along the way, but I wanted to make sure that I got to tell you on the day.
I feel honored. Again, you keep making me feel this sense of honor and privilege, and I so respect you for that. And I want to make you more a part of what I'm doing because I really admire you and what you are doing.
I love the connection. I love what we can do here. I love the continuation of it. I love, us doing this every month and having the conversations. I think that's so important. And I love keeping you posted on what we're doing.
Well, Caroline, it has been nothing but a pleasure for me to get caught up with you, to have these conversations and enlightenments that you are so good at and so articulate at helping me, helping my audience, and moving this cause forward. And I just want to be a small part of Safe in Harm's Way. And I want people who are listening to this to grab their wallets and their purses and open them up and start donating, because there is a million trillion reasons why giving to Safe in Harm's Way is something you should do.
Thank you for that. That's a heck of a call to action. If you are inspired by the stories you hear and you think, well, what can I do? It's to put the money forward and step up into a donation that helps people in unique ways find their voice again, or choose that their silence is the way that they use their voice in sharing stories and recognition and healing resources. And I appreciate your investment in us. I appreciate your investment in me and the friendship that we've developed and cultivated. There's so much beauty there. Getting to spend time with you and have these discussions is soul fuel, reiterating the work that we've done, the hard work we've done to heal in our own unique ways that got us here. So thank you for highlighting that with me this evening.
Absolutely. It's been my privilege and honor to do that and to have you on this show again. We'll do it once a month, because I think it's so important for people to hear from you, to know what Safe in Harm's Way is doing and working on, and what our thoughts are on the healing process and how we need to take care of ourselves and acknowledge our own personal healing process before we reach out and touch others. But Safe in Harm's Way isn't using this money to make Caroline rich or buy her a new car.
No.
This is money that's going to helping others get out of the situations that Caroline used to be in. It's saving lives. I hope no one ever thinks that either I nor Carolyn are doing anything to exploit the harm that people have experienced. It's the exact opposite. We're trying to help people. And yes, that unfortunately takes dollars. So let's do all we can to keep Safe in Harm's Way funded and moving ahead and doing what we can to save lives.
I don't think I could have said it any better, sir. Thank you very much.
And that was totally unscripted. Go figure.
I'm so impressed. I'm gonna have to dictate this when it comes back out and put my phone on so that it automatically picks up your voice and just writes it for me, because that's a beautiful way to end it. And I appreciate that, because it's definitely a labor of love, and it definitely is life-saving and life-impacting work. So Thanks for your support of it. Yep. Thanks for what you do in the world, and thanks for how you show up in it for me and for everybody else that you do.
Well, I love doing my podcast. I love talking to people and listening to their healing stories, and you've helped me immensely in getting the word out. You are part of why this podcast continues to grow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you so much, Dave.
And we're going to talk again in about a month, right?
We will. And it'll only take us again about 172 different text messages.
Absolutely, but it'll happen. It will happen. You have a fantastic evening.
I will. You as well.
We'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories. It was great to get caught up with Caroline and to hear the latest from Safe in Harm's Way. Thank you, Caroline. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm looking forward to our next update. I also want to thank you, my SAS audience, for joining me again this week and for being the loyal listeners that you are. Please help this podcast continue growing by telling everyone you know about this show. And if you haven't already, please click on the subscribe button and be sure to rate this show. Doing so helps bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault, and it helps the podcast grow. Another way to help bring justice to victims and survivors is to start by believing, because we all know someone whose life has been affected by rape or sexual assault. Be sure to tune in next time for another compelling story of rape and healing as we hear from another guest who is not only a survivor, but now helps others who are dealing with the trauma of rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.